Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephen Wang, and I'm a photographer slash filmmaker living in Brooklyn, New York. Today, I want to talk about a piece I made and posted recently onto Instagram. It's a spec ad for Neuro Running, and it's been the best performing piece of content that I've ever posted onto any platform ever. So I've recorded this video a couple of different times, and honestly, it was just kind of boring. It was like me talking on a white background, and I don't think it was that much personality. So I just wanted to switch things up and try this format. So my plans for this video are to do a production breakdown. So that's the gear, where we shot, some challenges we faced, and also our positioning for our spec ad down in this video. And then to also create a follow-up video talking about the previs we made to guide our shooting days, and then also the edit and color grade and some of the sound design. Cool, let's get into it. So I want to show off the first camera we used, which is the red Komodo X. Anything that you saw that was inside, any of the construction of the garments, the cutting, the sewing, etc., was all shot on this camera. We chose to use the Komodo X just because really it's my favorite camera at the moment. I love the way it looks. I think it's just like a wonderful camera, and sometimes it's overlooked these days. And I also want to call out the lens we used was the DZO Extract probe lens. So this is a zooming probe lens. I think, look at my face. It goes from, I think, 18 millimeters to 28, I want to say. And the variant we have is actually the 90-degree probe. I think 90-degree probes are generally not as popular, which is fair. I think, a direct view one is much more usable. So this lens ended up being pretty helpful in two different ways. For our overhead top-down shots, we just bumped our camera on sticks right up to the table and then had this facing downwards, and we were able to work underneath the probe lens and get that top-down angle, and it was super easy. This is a video of Z. This is while we were working on constructing the garment. So he's already cut out the vest and everything, but you can see tripod is just right up against the table. Komodo X is here. And then you can see this, like the probe lens is just perfectly popped out over his hands. And then, And then we have our monitor on top showing him what is happening so he can keep track of that composition as he's working on it. And then the other thing we did was there's a shot in the film where Z is messing with the toggles of the vest. And it's a transition as he's jumping over something. He opens the vest at the same time, and it feels like you are inside the vest. And without a probe lens, it would have been pretty hard to do that shot, I think, because we basically just ran the probe through the vest, and then we were just able to open it. And then here's the moment that I was mentioning. He's jumping over, and then boom, you are inside the vest. This is the probe lens just snaked through the probably the neck hole of the vest, and you're able to catch his fingers. Okay, so the other camera I want to mention is this guy right here. This is the Lumix S1R2. So this is mainly a photography camera, actually. This is basically like the higher megapixel brother of the S1 II, which is super popular with filmmakers at the moment. But it worked great. This is what we shot everything outdoors on. So anything that you saw where Z's running around outside or we're running at all, anything, that's literally just not the indoor stuff is all shot on this. And I know it's kind of backwards because the Komodo X has a global shutter and it doesn't have any rolling shutter artifacts. And this guy, the S1R2, has a slower sensor readout. It doesn't really suit exactly what we shot, or that's what you would think. But honestly, when viewing back the footage, I think it looks fantastic. Yes, some of it you can sometimes see some of that that slower sensor readout and things are kind of bending a little bit, but I think in the end it looks great. And we chose this because I was already packing for different things and planning to shoot different projects on the West Coast, and I just didn't have space for the Komodo X in the end. I know this camera really well, both inside and out for video, and I'm a huge fan of it for the color it produces, and I think those things are more important, right? Okay, next I want to talk about our MVP lens. So, you can see here, this is the Laowa 12mm D-Dreamer f2.8 lens. This is a photography lens, and it's an F mount, so that's a Nikon mount. And it's a lens I picked up on a whim right before leaving for this trip to do this shoot. And I actually did it for that shot where he's jumping, and it's the transition. And I only wanted to get that one shot with this, but we ended up just shooting so much of the film with this lens. And I think it really shaped the look in the end. ultra wide is such a interesting perspective, and I think it's actually having a moment in ads in the commercial space at the moment. It kind of gives a pseudo probe lens look, if you could call it that, because you're able to get so close to whatever subject or two different things, and you can focus so closely. That minimum focusing distance is pretty much touching the front element. It makes you really feel like you're immersed when you're watching back the video, like you're there experiencing the action or seeing that subject move, etc. Also, I think you might be able to see it, but this lens element is extremely domed. It is not possible to throw a filter on top. Anytime it was really bright, all I would be doing is just dropping my ISO as low as possible and then trying to stop down all the way. So I think a lot of what we shot outdoors when it was bright and shooting into the sun was at f11 or sometimes f22. But this was a great lens. I'm very happy with it. If you are, a fan of how the film looks, I would say, get this lens. This lens is a lot of the look. And it's a Nikon F mount. I think I picked this up for under $300. It's probably around 200 or something used. I own a lot of Nikon F mount lenses, actually. They generally are pretty sharp and they're pretty cheap. And I think the reason for that is Nikon just made such good glass, and they also made so much of it. And there's so many third-party manufacturers as well, like Laowa here, that you can pick these lenses up for not too much money, and they are such a good bang for your buck. Yeah, so the next lens I'll call out is this. This is the Lumix 70-200 f4 Pro S lens, I think. So I chose the f4 lens because it's significantly smaller and lighter than the 2.8 lens from Lumix. Generally, for my type of work, I don't need those extra shops of to be able to open the aperture up more. Like, I'm not super concerned with blowing out my background. It would be super nice to have the additional stop of light gathering capability, but for this shoot, I knew that it probably wasn't going to be too dark. Additionally, like, the Lumix cameras have a fantastic dynamic range, like a latitude of the amount of stops that you can pull back out if things are a little too dark. So this lens appears throughout the film. Anytime you see something that's more compressed, where all the layers are just like, right on top of each other, we're using this lens to do that. And the last lens I want to call out is this. This is the Nikon 28mm AIS lens. So this is from Nikon's film era. Once again, I love f-mount lenses. They're cheap, they're sharp, they're fantastic. I got this lens because of like the Nikon GOAT, Ken Rockwell, if you know him. He's got like all the Nikon information on the internet pretty much. He's got a super old school site. I love it. And I think he talks about this lens and just absolutely praises it as being incredibly engineered, well corrected, very sharp, and it's also quite cheap. We use this lens really in only 2 shots of the film. So there's 2 shots when we're upstate New York, wherein I'm using a gimbal and Z is running by the water and it's super smooth. That's on a gimbal, and that's shot using this lens. And then there's also one as he's running out from like a tunnel of bushes and trees. That's also on this lens. Really quickly, I want to get into the bag I brought. So I am a bag fiend, actually, and I'm generally a huge fan of Shimoda. They make fantastic quality bags. This is the Shimoda Explorer 35-liter version 2. So this is a hiking-based backpack. It's got thick padded hip straps, and it's got great shoulder straps as well that really keep your shoulders from getting too worn down over the day. And it holds a lot. It's a fantastic backpack. I'm very happy with it. The other bag I want to call out is this. This is the Tenba Roadie Roller V2. So this is a carry-on piece of luggage from Tenba. This is my first experience with Tenba, and I absolutely love this piece of luggage. I have experience with the Nanook 935, I think. And also, it's like that's basically the same as the Pelican 1615. Those like hard shell cases, which like a lot of photographers use. But I wanted to get something that was more inconspicuous. I feel like sometimes when you load your gear up in those things, it's so clear to say or to see that you have expensive things in there. I actually didn't have to check this bag at all, thankfully, but it comes with this like insert in the front. and it feels very sturdy. If I did have to check any of my cameras and gear and stuff, I would have been pretty. I wouldn't have been happy, but I think I would have been pretty secure and not too afraid of them absolutely destroying my stuff. We ended up camping in Big Sur for 2 nights and shooting pretty much all of the project there. And that's been shot in 2 locations. So that's at Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park. That's like pretty much where we spent 6 hours one day, and that's pretty much where most of the footage comes from. And then also Pfeiffer Beach, which you can guess that's where all the beach footage is from. I think we only shot for 2 hours during sunset or so. It is so violently beautiful in Big Sur. Like the wind is like punishing, and the sand is like flying everywhere on that beach day. So we kind of kept our filming there to a minimum. And then we had one pickup day after coming back home to New York City. We went and put together our edit, and I think both of us agreed that we were just missing like a couple little shots. And so we had our final pickup day in upstate New York in Beacon, New York. So early on, I already knew that I wanted all the indoor things to feel kind of like you're a cave or like isolated. And I wanted the story to kind of be like this person, our main character, is creating this vest, which then leads to them being outside and enjoying like life, or having like all these colors in this beautiful world like envelop them. To kind of make that happen, we kept our indoor things like very like simple. What we created the vest on is just white foam board. And for camera movements, there actually are no camera movements. There are parts in the film where in post I've gone and zoomed in a bit, or I'm creating a rotation. I think doing that in post allows it to feel very robotic, like purposefully. Whereas if we had done it on the day of, like with the fluid head or something, I think it would have felt too human, and I wanted the indoor things to feel dark and distinctly not human, pretty much. And then for the outdoors, that's where we really leaned into that California sun. Those sunny days really blessed us with giving us like so much shooting time, and also just like amazing colors and a biodiverse area where we could see like a forest and beach and blue sky and great clouds. But I think those 2 very distinct settings work to our advantage and kind of create these 2 different beats. Like we go from outside and there's like a lot of momentum, then it cuts to being inside and it's like it's intense again, and you're secluded, and then it cuts back outside and it's open again, and you're once again in the world, which is like living and breathing. And I also want to talk about the feeling of speed. So I think a huge part of this, like I said earlier, there's momentum in the film, and it's creating clips that look like you're moving fast, that give you a sense of moving through this world. Part of the reason why I think the 12 millimeter worked out so well is because it helps with that feeling of speed. When you're using a really wide lens, you can get it close to the floor, and the foreground or any foreground elements in general are just going to be whizzing by super quickly. So it feels like, I don't know, you're like an eagle or something, like diving by the floor or going through the trees or whatever, and it makes it feel fast. Whereas when we'd use the 70 to 200, sometimes things would feel really slow, even when Z was running a bit quicker. So to be able to use that longer lens, we would find trails where Z could run on them, and then I would literally just run out into the woods, and we would just run next to each other, and I would just aim the camera towards him, and we'd just do multiple takes. But the reason why we did that was because, that would put trees and bushes and stuff between us, which would whiz through the frame. And then, once again, it's those foreground elements, it's those background elements moving too, that give the feeling that your character is actually moving through a setting. And then lastly, probably one of the most important things is the sound design of the film. So like I said, I wanted the outdoor world to feel like it's living and breathing. And so in the sound design, there's actually like inhales and exhales, like as if somebody is breathing, as if like the world is breathing. There's also like clips of like birds chirping, etc., leaves crunching. All the audio that is played in that film is not what we actually captured on location, but it's something that we added in afterwards. And I definitely had a lot of fun designing that. So I mentioned earlier that I knew or had a good feeling that this was going to perform well. So Newer Running is a smaller running company. I'd say they have 50,000 followers on Instagram, which is like way more than I do. But compared to a giant like Nike or Adidas, it's much less. But that also means it's way easier for us to get noticed by them. And then we also knew that they generally share and repost things that their customers or fans put up. We created this piece. We knew that it would be reposted by Nor Running, and then targets that audience of runners who are also into like small brands, who are also into fashion and into these like technical materials, basically. Like that is a small intersection, and that means like if you create something which can talk to them, you're most likely going to have like a positive response. I posted the reel, and then that same day I saw Nora Running reposted it, and then I knew it would take some time. And so that first day, I think it was like we got like 2,000 views, and that second day is when we got a bulk or a majority of the views that we have now. I think we went from like 2,000 to 20-some thousand views over the course of 24 hours. And then now we're sitting around 40,000 views or so. And throughout the entire time, I could see like the shares and reposts and just like all the engagement just like going up and up and up. And I do want to note that like, I know that 40,000 views is probably not a lot for some people, but generally my content performs on Instagram, at least, at around like 1,000 views for reels. And then it's even less than that for posts, which are just photos. What I'm trying to get out of here is if you are also in the process of making these spec ads and stuff, positioning that you are targeting is probably very important, because it is incredible to make work and just like enjoy that process. But in the end, we do need to have it be seen to be able to lead to more clients, more work. And so thinking about how you can leverage a smaller like brand or company's following to boost your own presence and like to get more views and stuff, I think is pretty important. I think that's going to be it today. I've had some fun making this video. Hopefully it all made sense. If you are having any questions or anything about the production or the creation, the gear, etc., leave comments below, or you can send me DMs on Instagram, and I'll be sure to respond to them. If you have any questions about the editing, previs process, or color grading, or sound design even, that you would like me to answer in the following video I'm planning to do, you can also leave those as comments below. But until then, yeah, my name is Stephen Wang. Once again, if you are located in the New York City area, or even if you're not from here, get in contact. I'd love to hang out and work with more creatives on things, make more things, even just to hang out and get a coffee or something. Yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.